Old Gray Cemetery is the second oldest cemetery in Knoxville. It was founded in 1850 and occupies 13 acres in downtown Knoxville. When it was dedicated in 1852, the first 40 plots were sold at a public auction. The cemetery is a mixture of unmarked graves and massive monuments to honor the lives of those buried there. Old Gray Cemetery is named in honor of the English poet Thomas Gray. The name was suggested by Miss Henrietta Brown Reese, the wife of Judge William B. Reese, who was the first president of the Cemetery Board of Trustees. The first person to be buried in the cemetery was William Martin. He was fatally injured by an explosion during a celebration on July 4, 1851. Martin was buried on July 15th of 1851, even though the cemetery was not dedicated until the following June. His grave was originally unmarked. The diversity of people buried here is evident in the markers that have survived the 150-year history. Obelisks are very common in the cemetery. They are Egyptian symbols of eternal life and were the result of the classical view of death and resurrection. During the latter half of the 19th century, monuments became more massive. Victorians added symbolic elements such as trees, urns, flowers, Bibles, garland, birds, a sleeping lamb, and angels. One monument that sticks out to visitors is the Horn Monument. The Horn Monument features an almost life-size sculpture of a Confederate soldier, which marks the graves of two Confederate veterans, William Ashbury Horn and John Fletcher Horn. There are over 9,000 people buried at Old Gray Cemetery. The people buried in Old Gray range from politicians and soldiers to artists and activists. Many of the first burials were victims of the 1854 cholera epidemic in Knoxville. The cemetery witnessed one of the largest funeral processions ever conducted in the South when over 40,000 people attended the burial of former Tennessee Governor Robert Taylor. The cemetery also contains several dozen victims of the Newmarket train wreck of 1904. Old Gray Cemetery has rich background and definitely adds to Knoxville's heritage and history.